We're trying to make this the premier site. Milan is about just about an hour from Albuquerque, so it makes it far enough away from all the crime, but close enough to do business. So it's a lovely rural community. Next slide. This is just some of those small town advantages that we try to talk about, um, and some of the statistics of the community just to help shape the conversation. So again, medium age is 33 years old, so kind of in that nice sweet spot for workforce. Obviously, a lot of people have skills that haven't moved out for other jobs, that are ready, willing to go back to work. Anyway, there's just a number of things that I think comparably to my region, they actually excel from an economic development standpoint. So next slide. Just to situate you, they're about halfway between Albuquerque and Gallup on Interstate 40. They are on Burlington Northern Santa Fe's Transcon line. So the main line that goes from LA to Texas or LA to Chicago, depending on where you fork. But they sit they sit conveniently within the 12-hour rule for trucking. So they're the perfect place from the port of LA to stop for their 3 days down. Um, uh, Obviously the freight will keep going. So there's some strategic advantages being on the transportation asset side that they sit in. The land that we're looking at is actually um, close to a mile from a Superfund tailings pile that was mentioned yesterday. So home stake, Superfund site, tailings pile, is kind of right in the background of where this site is. It's less than 5 minutes from the highway. It's a good site in terms of being close to the village and proximity of infrastructure. But they also use it for like pumpkin patches uh, and events for kids right now. So the idea was getting this site master planned and up and ready. And so obviously with the Superfund site, you'll see had to do a lot of environmental environmental review. So go ahead. So this is some of the marketing materials that we came out with after kind of a decade-long process of planning and positioning this. We'll go into some of the pieces and how we got there, but they do have a designed 120,000 foot spec building. So they don't have a spec building, but if someone comes, they have one that can be shown, modeled to them. They can change the dimensions. We need higher ceilings. We need more bays. We need it split. We need 40,000 square feet. So we've done a lot with the architect to be able to show them, here's what we can do for you. Here's how long it would take to build that. So it keeps us in the game because a lot of people want rail served, but they also want a building that's existing. We just don't have those assets yet. Next slide. This is a little bit of our journey, and I apologize because it's been a long journey, a good journey, but it shows you, well, it shows you how long some economic development does take. So again, the village was approached by, this was the old Mormon farm. So they were approached to sell not only the land, about, let's just call it 600 acres for now, uh, plus or minus because it's an easy number. They also got acre feet of agricultural water, a substantial portion that could be used for agricultural uses, which water rights, having water is one thing, or having groundwater that you can access, but actually having the right to that water in New Mexico is a very rare thing. To be able to capture, a lot of our industries have water rights that they've been holding on to. And so Milan has a strategic opportunity to be able to, like I said, lean into agricultural added agriculture with those water rights. They have something that most people can't say they have. They may have paper water, but they don't have wet water, or reverse that maybe. So the card kind of got involved in terms of helping them find funding to do a master plan. So we did a site visioning plan with the community. Um, they really were leaning in for mixed use development and solving for a lot of their community needs, not just economic development. So that first master plan had a lot of elements that you would see from a planning perspective that were more of a community development type project, which were fine. Um, but we needed to go through kind of our site due diligence process. So at the time, the COG was running a brownfields program. So we took a substantial amount of money and invested because we were worried about downstream contamination, both water, soil, and air. So we needed to really do a thorough job. So we did phase one, we did phase two. We actually have lots of monitoring wells in the ground out there to kind of prove out things. But a lot of the uses that we had in the first master plan, daycare centers, for instance, weren't going to work for the things that we were finding, which weren't bad for industrial, but you didn't want to put your kids there kind of thing. So kind of needed to rethink that. The other thing that happens in that area was the Rio San Jose. So you guys might know the Continental Divide splits water on both sides. So on this side, it's the Rio Parco, on that side, it's Rio San Jose. So there's a channel that runs through the site. We needed to work on diverting the channel around our site, which anyone that's worked with FEMA and floodplains and LOMR and CLOMR know that it's not something that happens just because you want it to happen. So that took us down a different road. At the same time, we started to really look at Pruitt and some of these sites. We got some money from a state program through the New Mexico Finance Authority. They're kind of like our state bank. They're a quasi-governmental agency. They're good. I better not say on video. They're a very good partner in terms of financing opportunities. So they have a planning grant program. So we actually got McKinley County and Spola County to both apply for $50,000 each. We put it together and we did 4 studies. So we did a workforce assessment, a target industry study, a supply chain analysis. And then we took those 3 studies and actually boiled it down to like what industries are the best fit for this area and then for the site. And then like what are the NAICS codes and like what are the targets. So we got down to the gnat's eyebrow at the time of what our targets needed to be for not just this project, but kind of the site development work that I was talking about. 2022, we went back to the drawing board a little bit with our master planning. At that time, I think we actually got some EDA funds put together and kind of redid the master plan. And then we wanted to start taking steps on getting it shovel ready because that's what we kept hearing from people. Again, at the same time, we did the spec building design, which is available. That's actually at 90%. So it's like ready to construct whenever we have a client. Um, again, working through EDA funds, again, we were lucky because we were, uh, assistance to coal communities or whatever it was called over the years, power, ACC, whatever it's called now. We've been lucky because in the Austin region, when you look for coal impacts, there's one place. I know they've invested in other places. Maybe there's 2 places. There's actually North Central has a coal mine project, a redevelopment project that's pretty good. But when you look at the map, the impacts are northwest of Mexico all day long, every day. And so we've been able to kind of say, we're worthy of investment. We can show you why we're worthy. We can show you what we're doing, but we need all the money all the time to bend this curve. And so we've been really working through EDA, both on the planning side and also the construction side, which you'll see. So we were able to get to final design of a build out of infrastructure for the park, which was really exciting. Next slide. This is the environmental review. We have this in our slide deck because this is the number one thing. As you know, working in communities, the rumor is more valuable than the truth, or it spreads a lot faster anyway. And so we have brought out the recs from our phase one. There's significant in terms of potential contamination that exists. But the real issue was Homestake Mining Company Can you go to the next slide? So again, once you kind of, so folks that don't know what a phase one is, environmental, again, it's not NEPA really, but it has parts of it. And so phase one is like a background check on a property, like all the records of like how it was used, if there was ever a leak reported to the state, a permitting issue, anything that could cause environmental concern. So once you have that background check, they say, these are things that are concerns. These are things that you should actually study further. And so again, we went and did a sampling and analysis plan of how we were going to look at down gradient potential issues with the legacy uranium superfund site. And so a lot of these are our soil samples. I believe there's also our monitoring wells that we poked holes and still have to this day. And then some of the things that were proposed around agriculture kind of overlaid from our initial kind of idea of what we wanted the park to be. Next slide. So we got down to a phase two, which again, we put the language up there. There are some concerns in terms of one spot that needs to be tested before development happens. But otherwise, for industrial use, we don't pop on any of the things. You might have hit the button. You're good. So again, this was an important step where we almost ran too fast forward past this, but the community kept telling us.
Don't keep lines. Anyway. Oh, but.
All right, we have lights.
Most of them.
Most of them. Wow, yeah. Go to the next. So I don't know if Chris is on because he's gonna have to help me with some of this if he is. Chris, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay,
Andy,
okay.
interstate was a mess, hence alternate transportation.
Yeah, so Chris was trying to make it up with his presentation. I-40 is I-40 is a parking lot.
Yeah, it was today. It was closed, closer to Albuquerque. It was way backed up the rest of the way, and here I am.
Can you see the slide?
Yeah, I can. So some of the design outcomes, we did complete the mapping and survey for the site. We did get some additional survey in 2021 when we started the EDA project for Mill Road. And also just additional information we determined we needed to get. We also did some preliminary geotech investigation for purposes of roadways, pavement design, how that infrastructure would look. We do have a kind of a master plan that shows a roadway network within the site, which obviously could and possibly be modified depending on the end user and their needs. And currently, like I said, we're working on the EDA portion, which was money that was secured for the main axis of Mills Road. That project basically consists of getting access off of New Mexico 122 into the site. We crossed the Transcon line, so as you can imagine, there's been an extensive amount of coordination and diligence with the BNSF Railway to get agreements signed, permitted, and actual construction done. We did have initial conversations with rail service for the site back in 2021. And again, as Evan alluded to in a previous slide, we're working to get site certification, which would then make it an eligible site for connection, transload facilities, or just rail service in general to the site. Water and sewer was kind of been an ongoing thing with the village, where they've been fortunate to get monies appropriated to the state legislature to make improvements to the, I would call it the eastern infrastructure that would then be extended to the west to connect to the site and get full service water and sewer to the site as well. There's also been quite a bit of coordination with dry utilities as far as New Mexico Gas, Continental Divide Electric Co-op to get service. That one's a little bit difficult, just like the water wastewater, because we've had to make a lot of assumptions on who potential users would be and what their requirements for water, sewer, power, gas might be based on the different industries and manufacturing and what type of clients may come in. So I think we have a good plan, but that'll obviously have to be revisited based on who ends up being the final tenants that come in. And again, we do have a spec building that's have a preliminary design for that. Again, it's ongoing, and again, it can be modified based on user requirements. As Evan said, size, footprint, parking, less parking, more parking. The one thing I didn't really cover so much in roadway and drainage is we do have a drainage master plan for the entire site. Everything pretty much flows to the Rio San Jose, which is now on the north boundary of the site. And we've just recently completed another project downstream at Stanley Bridge that will take out the last small piece of the floodplain within the Milan Industrial Park. So we're working on getting that project complete, and then we'll submit. I can't remember if we're going Lomer, Clomer, or Clomer, Lomer. I always get the two confused, but basically we'll get the last remaining piece out of the floodplain. And then again, as I said, we're working on BNSF certification, which includes the different surveys that we've done. And then again, trying to just secure what is the use going to be? How many unit cars do we need in and out? Because of the Transcon line, some of the lengths for unit lines and connections has changed, and they've changed in the sense that they've gotten longer because a lot of the trains on the Transcon line are now much longer than they were in prior years. And so again, we're ongoing coordination with the BNSF. BNSF also has a big push of closing the REC program, the rural crossing program, to close other connections across the Transcon line. So one of the hurdles we had to jump over is to get the mill crossing was a private crossing. So in order to make it a public crossing, we had to close a different crossing farther to the west. So that's been an ongoing process that we've been working on as well. And then again, as I said, the lower Clomer is complete for 95% of the site, with the exception of the lower piece that will now be taken care of with the completion of Stanley Bridge and widening up the Rio San Jose downstream so that the backwater condition doesn't put any of the property back into the floodplain. And so that was kind of a quick overview, Evan. I don't know if you have specific questions or if I left something out.
No, that's good.
That's good.
Anyone in the audience have questions?
Not yet.
All right.
So,
So you want me to do this one, or you got it?
I got it.
Okay.
So again, once we got the final design done, we had Chris and his team break down the cost. These are 2022-ish costs, so just add 2.5% or 2.5 times. But with the board of trustees of the Village of Milan, they really wanted us to get something that was tangible, doable, showcase to the community that something could happen. So we kind of divided into two phases. A first phase was really the area we thought was most attractive to companies. And then even the second phase, they talked about kind of leaving no infrastructure for now. But we did run the cost for full build of the whole industrial park, and we have a layout that we'll show you. These are obviously some of the costs. The spec building development costs is pretty substantial that you can see there. There are some programs in New Mexico being aimed at spec building development, so it's nice that we have that in our back pocket. But these were the costs. The other challenge was the Village of Milan, like many communities, want economic development, but they also know that they need basic utilities and services, because that's what they run on. And so the Village of Milan very concretely told the partners, we need you to get the infrastructure we need for the community without mixing and matching grant dollars. So you got to go find economic development dollars that we can't get any other way, but at the same time, get us the community dollars we need to fix our wastewater system, our water lines, our roads. And so they were very specific on like, we still need this first. That's gonna be great if you can figure out how to do that through other programs. So the good thing is that gives you direction on what you can do and not do. So it's pretty positive. So this is kind of the phase one build, very basic, but has all those services built in. You can kind of see some of the red along the Transcon line. That was the idea of just stacking trains, almost like a switching yard, right next to the Transcon line, versus the original design, which had kind of a unit train stacking, which you'll see some of that tomorrow, in a different project. But this was the idea of how we could get started. And so, 21 million, not a big deal. We know how to stack capital, so go ahead. So taking a script out of one of the projects in New Mexico that's highly successful with Union Pacific, Santa Teresa, we had a lot of conversations. We went down, did a lot of site visits. We really explored how their development happened in the early days before people even believed that it was a good project and a good investment. They have the border kind of connectivity to the maquiladoras industry, which again, tariffs and things are changing, but a lot of our manufacturing went into Mexico, but it still needs to be finalized in America. And so a lot of those products kind of go back and forth. So Santa Teresa is like an inland port, rail served industrial park on steroids. And so when we talked to them, they were like, listen, the best thing you guys could do if you think you're going to be successful is talk about and plan transportation. The one thing they didn't do was expect growth and expect transportation. So you see a lot of our work that we showed you before, like transportation master plans, like trying to get ahead for the next 50 years of what this development, if it's successful, will bring in terms of transportation. So taking a playbook out of their book, this was Mark Lotman, who's for New Mexico, the famous economic developer. He's done projects like Rio Rancho, bringing Intel to Rio Rancho. He's done Mesa del Sol, which is a huge master plan project. He's done some stuff in solo works, like non being able to do digital jobs, not call centers, but kind of higher level stuff from your home. But being able to be in rural communities and do that type of solo work. So he's done a lot of groundbreaking things, but he slipped me this napkin and said, this is what we did in Santa Teresa. So this is our 15-year kind of plan, that kind of walks through, the things we think we need to do, both from an economic developer standpoint in terms of, you know, how many leads do we need, how many site visits, how many jobs can we create based on kind of the methodology of recruitment. Talks about some of our immediate target industries and the future targeted industries. So it goes through kind of the strategy. I know this is like code, you know, if you're not inside the baseball, you don't get what's going on in the game kind of thing, but it also talks about things we need from the community in terms of infrastructure, financing, how we're going to get there, workforce development, some of the expansion of things that we've been doing in this region that just kind of flow together. So again, we tried to give kind of a perspective that like, when this is like fully developed, I'm talking about 15 years of commitment. So the good thing is we're still in 2025 and we're not that far away from where we need to be on a lot of these things. And it's nice that the community really wants to refocus. So again, this provides kind of a roadmap of how we need to move together. So, and I hope my partners will take this and flesh it out, make it theirs, because, you know, this is just my brain on drugs. But it needs to be everybody's brain on drugs, so that we can make it happen. So some of the things coming out of our earlier work, and I apologize for the messiness of the slide, but again, some of those best fit targets coming from location quotients. How many have gone through like IEDC or basic economic development? Okay, good. Perfect. Then I can lie about a lot of things. Location quotient is just an easy way to talk about competitive advantages. you're over one, you're more, competitive than other places in America. So we try, this is a hardcore economic development tool, but it shouldn't just be used alone. So we use screens like, those are the best fit targets, but like our deals happening in Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. Because if those deals aren't happening, they probably aren't happening in New Mexico. So even though you're like super competitive, you got to see where the industry is actually wanting to go and wanting to go near you so that you can figure out how to maximize that competitive advantage. Anyway, those are our best fits. Some of those are not neatly in our, what we wanted to do with agriculture and value add, but they are the ones that could, could win for us, in terms of recruitment. So I also wanted to show you, because this is the IADC methodology, and I would encourage you, to take basic economic development through whoever's offering Oklahoma or in your state. It's a good primer for everything you need. If you want to go down the path to become certified, the most important course is the real estate development. These are the 8 steps of real estate development, and it's taught really well. Something that I wish I would have gotten early on, because the worst thing you can do is take these steps in the wrong order. And so they're very, there's a method to the madness. So pre-development is kind of the work you heard very early on that we were doing in terms of looking at properties that would be good properties for industrial development. So a lot of pre-development work went into that. And then a lot of the market, financial and political feasibility had to come after. And then you heard from Chris, all of the site and engineering work that went into this, including, site due diligence, environmental review, appraisal, et cetera. All that stuff needs to happen in the next phase. And then really think about your financing plan, not just like your your horizontal infrastructure, but your vertical, figuring out who your partners might be from a developer standpoint or a recruitment standpoint. You can put out like a request for, developers, which is like your contract negotiations and public approval. You got to make sure your zoning is up to date for that area, going through the lightning speed, but, and then construction, once you have the funding and, the negotiated project, you go through the construction of both either horizontal or vertical. Then you actually start marketing your site, which is the one we always like to do first. Let's start marketing, like you saw on the third slide. We were ready to market that thing and just get people through the door without knowing what we were selling or having the product to sell. And then the last one is really, especially for like, residential, is your building occupancy and management, but even for an industrial park, having security, having a business park manager, having all those other, folks in place. So, that's the 8 steps in 8 minutes. This was one of the early on concepts, but I think, because it has the unit train loop, some of these properties got kind of, bought and sold, over the years, so it's changed a little bit, but I like the way that it's laying it out in, those different zones, those color zones of how we were gonna grow from phase 1, to phase 2, but making sure we had a concrete, message, and a concrete idea. And some of this was based on actual clients or, potential clients that we were working with. Said, I need to be here. This is what I'm gonna need to look for in terms of acreage infrastructure. So this was an early on exercise. We've talked to the community about, there's several different ways to shape these things. It's a public and, industrial park today. So you can stay publicly controlled. We've gone through the pros and cons of that. You can also do public-private partnership. Although you're not allowed in New Mexico unless you're a trade port right now, but, there's ways to create public-private partnerships that are, anyway, in a way that makes sense. Even just a recruitment team that has private sector people on it, public sector folks, to be able to entertain site visits. Also, they could sell it to a private developer. We've had a couple people say, this is next to Century, so this is the best site that the potential for this site is probably the best in New Mexico. So we've had people that are very interested in, well, they know how they would make money out of this project. So it's good to know that because it tells us we're on the right track. So again, the Village of Milan has kept this in public control, and I think it's good because New Mexico has an anti-donation clause in our constitution, so we're not allowed to put public funds into a private benefit, which makes our economic development really, really hard. But they've given us a workaround through the Local Economic Development Act that allows for certain investments. And so again, being publicly controlled, they have access to a lot more like infrastructure money and programs. So right now, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to keep it under that management. We've talked about the build out, like people remember having agriculture and grazing and, we don't need that much, when they see the $20 million price tag, they're like, hey, wait a second. I mean, maybe we could find something that doesn't need all of that infrastructure to come here. Maybe we can go back to some of our roots. So we've had those conversations. Then we kind of got to, full build out, no build out, to kind of like, let's do this in phases. Let's do a partial build out and see where that takes us, especially if it's other people's money. I mean, what do you got to lose if you can get them to invest? It just makes your property more expensive, more investable. So this is an exercise that I did. I don't know that I have the chops to do it, but I took a look at every industrial park that we kind of know about in New Mexico, and I looked at how much they were selling and leasing land for. And I did kind of a no infrastructure, full infrastructure review of like, if they didn't get any money from the government, what would those lots need to be priced at to then be able to recoup any of the infrastructure the village put in or a private sector person put in. So I ran a couple scenarios for them to get to, because the two questions in economic development is where am I going and how much does it cost? If you can't answer those questions, you're not in the game. So again, knowing what we could charge and trying to find a sweet spot between Los Lunas and like Gallup, who has, barely any infrastructure and full build out. We're trying to find a sweet spot kind of in the middle. So I think this makes them really competitive. So we did a rate sheet just to kind of get things going. Wilson and Company helped us kind of divvy up the lots and subdivide the property. So it made it pretty easy to do it on the acreage basis. This is present, well, not even present day, almost. So we had, and I don't know, no one was in Las Cruces, right, except NATO staff, so good. I started my presentation by saying that I've never failed more in my life than in the Build Back Better competition. I felt like that was written for my region, and my friend from Utah knows I tried to reach out and get everybody from the 4 states to support us. And we didn't make it through round 1. But one of the concepts was, $75 million challenge, trying to get 25 million for broadband in San Juan. That was their major like infrastructure need that they were looking at. 25 million for a couple projects in McKinley County, including the Pruitt Industrial Park. And then 25 million would have been that magic number to take Milan to like phase 1, to get phase 1 put in the ground, which would have been awesome. But we lost, no, I lost. Again, I don't like to lose, so I'm gonna find a way to get this done. So if we applied DDA for about 8 million with no match, not a great idea. Take a shot downfield, and I was testing my relationship with EDA, and they let me know where we're at. So that was another failed attempt. So now I'm 0 for 2. We start to get some turnover in local governments. The county starts to get interested in economic development, so I make a pitch to them. We had a village manager before Candy that fully didn't grasp the magnitude of what we were talking about. So again, at that point, I think we're done. Like, it's not meant to be. It's on the stars. Like, it's a lot of work, but like we're done. So fast forward, Chris. I'm just gonna push through this slide, Chris. But again, we continue to work in the background with Wilson and Company. We finalized some of the other pieces that we didn't get through, well, that were part of the design. So don't worry, Chris, I got it. Yeah, just some of the other pieces we're working in the background. We're not letting this thing die. Go ahead. Wilson's finalizing work. We finished our sub-regional plan, which again, I told you, transportation, transportation when you're doing these things is important. So we did kind of a 40-year plan that has both the Pruitt and the Milan sites and the whole regional transportation corridor. So great recommendations of like, here's what you're gonna have to address first. When you start growing at this amount, you're gonna have to address these things. If you get to this level, you're gonna need like a new interchange on 540. So like a very competent transportation plan that links back to if the economic developers do their job, this is what you can expect needing from a transportation standpoint. So again, we take a step back, we look at funding strategy. Obviously, I got it wrong. We talk about some of the land transfers that happened. So what's happening in the background is Homestake is figuring out they need more land to kind of buffer anything that's happening downstream. So they're interested in kind of purchasing more property in the industrial park. So our industrial park is getting smaller. And they're working hand in fist with us in terms of what they want to do and what we can do. So starting to limit some of the things. Leadership changes. We get a new village manager that comes from the finance manager and becomes both managers. Now is both managers, I think, still, but not an interim. So Candy's on board. She actually lives uh, close to the site. Her family has had to move on, some of them to get other jobs in the area because they were working at the coal mine. And so she gets it. So all of a sudden we start saying, okay, we got around to VDA. We can't bite off the whole thing again. We've got to get match money. We've got to put a competitive application. So we start looking at the access and the roadway network. And we figure we can put, if we can stack about $4 million, we can get that piece done. That shows people some progress. It shows people that we're putting in the infrastructure. And so we take a shot at EDA. It's the first time our state, based on the Colorado model, I think, I'm pretty sure other people have it, but when bipartisan infrastructure law opened up, a lot of those grants have an 80-20 match. So communities that are rural aren't ever gonna have the 20% that they need. They're not gonna borrow for it because they're pretty conservative. They don't want to take out debt. So a lot of states set up these match fund programs to be able to apply to the match fund and say, if you get this grant, then we'll give you the match from the state. And so we applied for the match, or at least what we thought we needed, which was 600,000. I think I have a slide next that shows where we ended up. But anyway, so we applied 2.7 to EDA with 600 match committed from the state. We also put in a bunch of interchange planning grants. There was a pot of money to improve I-40 because of the issues Chris is having where it turns into a parking lot almost every day. There was a lot of money going into I-40. So we said, if there's ever going to be a chance of planning those things way in the future, might as well apply for that too. We got all those awards. There was a new pot of money called Economic Recovery for communities like Northwest New Mexico. Applied for the max, stacked another million on top. We've gone through the zoning review. Wilson and Company is giving us the changes we need. The state of New Mexico created the site readiness program, which is perfect because in all these changes of the land situation, we actually do need to just reassess. Plus we had COVID, plus we had the new administration. So the world of economic development has changed since we did our last. So if we get into the site readiness program, we'll be able to exactly understand where we're at, what our best fits are again, and recalibrate. Again, I'm doing this briefing today, and the roadway access for the EDA funds will be completed June 30th with the state money, because otherwise it goes back. So this is just kind of how we refined down. The big thing was EDA came back. We were applying for 2.4, which is the 80-20 we needed. EDA told us they had a little bit more money, so could we come up with more match? So the COG received out of the 5 million community fund from Tri-State that went out, we got 250,000 that we've been socking away. So when we heard we needed 85,000 more, the COG just said we got that. There's no reason not to just keep stacking. So we threw our money in. We ended up backing it back out when we got the $1 million from the state, because that splashed the pot more than 85,000. So that's kind of how we did our round of that. This is the proposal for the $1 million. It shows you the stack at the bottom. There was a nice article when we won the EDA award that in the Albuquerque Journal that basically outlines us moving from the carrot capital of the world to hopefully something in the future that's not boom bust. So our tagline for our economic development is we want to move from boom bust to robust. We want to create quality jobs where people are rooted. Those are the two kind of screens we use for the economic development we do. This is just some of the planning work that led to the interchange funding, some of the other transportation projects that lend themselves to the Milan Industrial Park. And then we're at the end. Can you cut me off, video? And good. How did I do, Candy? Any good?
You'll always do it great.